Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
We are delighted, exceptionally delighted, in Our Town to have a special guest that I've known for more years than I hate to admit, but he's a special man, Maurice Cullinane, former chief of police of the Metropolitan Police Department, who is a native Washingtonian. He was a Navy veteran, got out in the Navy in 1951, and he became a cop, or a policeman as we call them now. But when he grew up, they were cops, and they were great. And things were different, but they really weren't, Cully. Your years in the force saw a lot of changes, a lot of things happen. They were tumultuous in the 70s, and I recall people saying, this is great, we've settled all the problems now. And look what we're facing. Cully was the first police chief to face the so-called terrorists. They were Hanafi Muslims. And what year was that, Cully? 77?
1977.
And they were a serious threat to our city.
Actually, they came into the B'nai B'rith about 10:30 in the morning. 7 gunmen. They took 120 some hostages there.
At the B'nai B'rith?
At the B'nai B'rith, and I went up and was trying to talk to them and find out what was their complaint. And we were just yelling up and down the steps, and I got notified several hours later that they took over the Islamic Center up on Massachusetts Avenue. There was 3 gunmen in there, and so we went back and we had a command center set up because we were having so many demonstrations. And I tried to talk to them, and then they took over the district building, and that's where shots were fired, and a young reporter, his name was Maurice Williams, was killed. And
was he the only fatality?
He was the only fatality during the whole time, but Marion Barry, who was later called the mayor for life, but he was shot. He was on the council at the time, and he was shot, and the bullet hit him in a place that would have killed him, but the bullet had bounced off of the walls before it hit him, and it was spent.
He was not a target then. It was an accident almost.
Well, I don't know. They were just shooting at random. And it was just an unusual situation. Back in 1973, the black Muslims had been attacked up on 16th Street. And there was a fellow, his name was Hamas. It's actually his name. He could have changed it legally, I don't know, but his name was McGee. And he was 54 years old, and he'd been in his army, and he got discharged for mental instability. And he was with the black Muslims, and the black Muslims just appealed to a very small number of blacks because they were advocating
very militant group.
They were extremely militant, and he was not. So he dropped out of the black Muslims to be just an Orthodox Muslim, but he did it with a letter that irritated the black Muslims, and they came in 1973 to a house that was owned by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they killed 5 of his children, one of whom was just months old, 2 or 3 months old. And they killed a total of 7 people. And so we got the homicide squad, locked them up. They came from a mosque up in Philadelphia, but it was really a cover for a bunch of criminals. And they locked them up, and they convicted him, and all of them went to jail for life. But he couldn't swallow it. He just couldn't get it off his mind. And so one of his demands was you bring those 5 down there, and he was going to give them the sentence that he thought they deserved. He was going to kill them.
Well, Cully, what has happened is the world has changed, but it really hasn't. I mean, we're not facing, at this point, there are no hostages, but there are demonstrations right now, today, in downtown Washington, and it's not by the Panthers or the black community, it's by the Black Lives Matter group.
Well,
it always mattered. Black lives always mattered. White lives have always mattered.
Well, they continue to have these silver bullets that are going to straighten things out, but we seem to be in a vicious circle. I don't think things are as bad as they were back in the 60s, but they continue to come around. Back in the 60s, we had the Black Power movement, and they were very militant. And we had one of them had killed a policeman out in California. I'm not sure. I think it was Oakland.
The Black Panther.
And his name was Huey Newton. And you would read that they were going to blow up police stations and kill hundreds of policemen. And then things quieted down, but I don't really know what to say about what's going on right now. We're going through a very rough period of time. Some of it is more in your area of expertise. I mean, the police department has to continue to try to get the policemen to understand when they go into communities.
To adapt.
Yeah. But also you have this social media, and you got texting, and you see things that are sent out. There is nobody like you that edits it to see whether it's accurate or not. You send something out,
and there it is.
And after it gets repeated 3 times, it's gospel. There may not be any truth to it, when you look at the
flies,
at the hits that they get on those things, thousands and tens of thousands of them. So we're in a difficult time.
Well, Cully, over the years, of course, you've seen the ups and the downs and the highs and lows, but has the policing changed dramatically since you were chief? I guess it's gotten a little more modern with cameras, and they look like men from Mars in some cases. You didn't have all that benefit.
Well, we didn't, but actually the generation before me deserved an awful lot of credit. They held the city together, and they had no training, they had no equipment. And the thing that brought my police department up to date was the civil rights demonstrations and the anti-war demonstrations. I mean, we had people coming. There was some argument about whether the Million Man March brought 1 million people, but I can tell you that May Day and then brought 1 million people, and the police had to get used to dealing with crowds and how to handle them, and we got pretty good at it. I think we got very good at it. Now, it's really not the entire police departments. You know, there's 17,000 police departments in this country. And actually, I know a little bit more about mine than I do about the rest of them. But the city will have between 500,000 and 600,000 calls for service a year. And that's 68 square miles. That's a relatively small area.
That's right.
They're not initiating any of those calls. So 58,000 or 50...
500,000.
No, 50, 60, 500,000 or 600,000 people want policemen because they call them. And it's really the location. It's
Neighborhoods.
If you don't get a whole lot of calls, nor do you get a lot of complaints in affluent neighborhoods. You get where they're complaining about the police. You'll see that they're getting an inordinate number of calls for help from the police. So everybody over there is not interested in the police department not
I understand what you're saying. And that is a fact. It's on the record. I talked to enough people in the department to know that. But the thing that stunned me about the city over my years, which have been as long as yours, is the neighborhood. They had something in the paper the other day about Bloomingdale. I thought that was a department store. It's now a neighborhood. Now they got neighborhoods, Cully, I didn't know existed. I know Ivy City. I know, what do they call Plum Poodle? That's the names they used to call it. But now the city's changed so dramatically.
They have. Actually, Bloomingdale's was there when we were kids. The new one on me is No Mas. I had to go ask somebody. That means north of Massachusetts Avenue. We used to call it, as you said, the part of it was around North Capitol and K Street was called Swamp Poodle, and as you
Absolutely.
got them, but
and the gas company, the gas works, there was a neighborhood.
But
Cully, the other thing is that now all these areas are served, of course, but I'm also stunned by the city attempting to bring back the streetcars because they never should have gotten rid of it. You grew up with the streetcars, and it was a great, great thing.
You
rode the streetcar.
I rode many a streetcar. That's why when I'm asked by some of our old friends, let's go over on H Street and get on the streetcar, I say, I already been on that streetcar. But I don't, H Street is pretty much already developed. And it only runs from right there around Bladensburg and 15th Street down to Union Station. But I think they could use it, and it would help some if they went out Benning Road out to where they used to do that.
It looks to me like the dullest thing. It's a road to nowhere. It stopped, and now they're going to expand it. But the track, I don't think they're charging yet on 8th Street. I'll get back to that because we're talking to Maurice Cullinane, former chief of the Metropolitan Police Department and a native Washingtonian, and we're talking about the city and our town, and we're going to talk about heroes in a minute. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen, brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
Are you retired or soon will be? Is your will up to date? Don't want to leave a mess for your family to clean up. I'm attorney Mike Collins, the guy who sends you those invitations to my estate planning seminar. I'll teach you how to save taxes, avoid probate, protect your heirs from lawsuits, bankruptcy, even the divorce court. Keep your money in your family with our innovative Reservoir Trust. Watch the mail for your invitation. Tuition's free when you register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
Yeah, we're talking to Maurice Cullinane, former chief of police of the Metropolitan Police Department, and a fountain of information about our town because he was born here, grew up here, and spent his life here, and still spending his life here. And Cully, you were one of the instrumentals of at least the idea of Heroes Incorporated.
Well, I can't take credit for that.
No, you didn't start it. I said, but no, you were involved.
I was involved from the beginning, and what had happened to us is we lost when a policeman got killed. They would give a number, and citizens would send checks into a branch of the National Bank of Washington, which was right down from police headquarters. And we got two policemen that were killed back to back. And when the money was sent, it was sent in the name of the officer that was killed. And so the first officer that got killed, the city was very generous, and his widow got a substantial amount of money for those days. But when the second one, it wasn't anything different in the killing of the policeman, but they had just given a fellow named Leonard Doggett, Bud Doggett, realized that the second one had not been treated very fairly. And so he and a handful of
Local
business people. And my job, which was a fairly easy job at the time, was to go to the various businesses and get money. But at that time, if you wanted to, Riggs Bank had 60% of all of the domestic deposits in it. If you needed money, you went up and asked Vince Burke to give you a check, and he'd say, just a minute, and he'd talk to you while his secretary made out a check, and he'd sign and hand it to you. Now, if you tried the same thing, they'd say, well, the corporate headquarters is someplace. So it's a little bit more difficult, but we have, our main thing is we get them out of financial trouble. And then they just had it last Thursday and Friday over in Fairfax County. They had the annual golf tournament, which will bring in excess of $200,000. But we've got 5 or 6 children in college, and we pay for the room, board, tuition, the whole 9 yards.
It's a marvelous thing and also for firefighters, police and firefighters, they're equally vulnerable in this new community of violence that we face. And we've taken care of a lot of widows and
took care of an awful
lot of men. Their
them.
wives have been shot. There was one of the police women or FBI woman that got shot. We took care of her husband. But Cully, Heroes was a tribute to Bud Doggett and to the people that put it together. It's stronger than ever. Sherry has done a fabulous job. And Heroes is sent Janice reminds me, the Heroes sent $10K to the Dallas Police Department for the memorial service.
That she did send it out there, and I talked to her. But they've sent, when there's a tragedy, that's a tradition that Heroes will do that
to help
and
others.
I haven't seen Mrs. Doggett since Louisiana, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was money sent there. And it was a little bit before her time, but when this first thing started, those fellas that started it reached in their own pocket because we didn't have any money, and we've now got money, and they don't have to do it quite as much. But those business people were extremely generous. It was never just for policemen. They've expanded it. It was for the city, and then it went out to every county that was contiguous to the city.
We began adding counties. And they added other departments.
Well,
so
they added
FBI,
all the federal
Service,
law enforcement agencies, and they picked up Prince William, which does not touch the city.
That's our town now, Cully. Prince William is part of Washington. It is. It was to me. It used to be an all-day trip to go to Prince William County, and maybe not come back. The only time you went down there would see the jail.
Only you and I would. You and I are the only people left. That Stanton Park was the end of Capitol Hill when you and I were kids. Now they're going east of the Anacostia River, particularly the real estate people, and advertising that the houses were on Capitol Hill.
I keep telling Janice that I'm over Lincoln Park. I said Capitol Hill. I said Lincoln Park is not on Capitol Hill.
I'm telling you, they're at it.
They're going all the way to the Armory.
Where Maryland Avenue, 15th Street, Bladensburg Road, 8th Street comes together, that's Capitol Hill. You couldn't shoot a cannon and hit the Capitol.
So, Cully, how about the mayors that you worked for? I know you didn't. Walter was your guru, correct? Was he a mayor before Walter? No, he was our first mayor.
He was appointed by President Johnson, and then Mayor Washington won.
He ran for election.
And won. So he was an appointed mayor and an elected mayor, and there was no one as good. He
never will be, Cully.
In his day, and under some very trying times, he's the only one that I've ever seen that could get their arms around the various communities. The business community liked him, the black community liked him, the white community liked him. And even though he got defeated, his personal popularity never dropped.
Never dropped. It's amazing.
I mean,
he was more popular 20 years later than he was as mayor.
I would tell him that I don't like to walk down the street with you. Taxi cab stop, people jump out of cars. It takes me 10 minutes to walk 1 block. But he was a great guy. He lived up in LaDroit Park, which you said you didn't know. That's 4th
Jesse
Street.
Jackson was his neighbor.
Yes, he was. But that was the Bullock's house. That was his wife.
But Cully, how about Marion? Was he ever the mayor when you were in office?
No, he came immediately after me. In fact, I've been accused of leaving because of him, but that's not true.
Who did he replace you with? Jerry Brown?
No, Bertell Jefferson.
Oh, yeah, I remember Jeff. Good guy. I liked him.
He's still around.
Is Jeff still alive? Good.
Jeff is. Then Turner's gone.
And Marion appointed him?
Marion, I think maybe Marion had to appoint Turner.
Jeff.
Because I know he appointed Fullwood.
Yeah, Ike.
Yeah,
Isaac Fullwood.
Ike's having an awful lot of health problems.
Yeah, well, but Cully, Marion there are a lot of business people thought Marion was very good to business too. You know, they praise him. Now they put him down for his civil rights stand, but they loved him as a businessman. He did some good things, Cully.
I got promoted one time, but Marion didn't mean to do it, but he was running Pride, and a policeman, his name was Jack Kenny. He was a very good policeman, a very good official, but he was up at the 3rd District, and he just couldn't take it, and he left. He never came back. He never cleaned out his desk. He never did anything. I mean, he was eligible for retirement. He retired. And I went up there because there was the 3rd District pilot project. It was another one of the things that we talked about earlier. So the OEO gave us some money, and they paid the policemen to go, and they brought in the drug dealers, and they brought in the prostitutes, and they brought in the thieves, and the policemen would get into arguments, and they were trying to make them get along. And the reason that nobody wanted to go up there was then I had to quiet them down to get them in the scout cars when it was over, and quiet them down enough to get them back to work. So I've known Marion since Pride.
I did too. I met Marion at Pride.
But police stations, they're not now, but when they had teletypes and telephones and switchboards, because we had call boxes, so they're very loud. And when you'd sit in your office, and if it got real loud, then you would know that Mary was in there. Because the policeman, if Marion came in, they'd run him out. They'd just open the door and push him out on V Street. Mary, they would go out on V Street, and they would light up. At that time, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were smoking. They'd light up a cigarette because Mary started off with
Mary Treadwell.
Some bad language, and then she advanced from there, and she literally would run the policemen, most of whom had a lot of time on. Now, if Marion came in and complained, he was always complaining about whether they gave tickets to people when they went to Pride and parked in the alley, and they also were always having trouble not paying their city taxes, and the police department got those warrants. So Marion would come in every now and then, and they would just tell him to get out, and he would do it. When Mary come in, she'd tell the policeman, and when she got done with them, they'd leave for 5 minutes to stand out front.
Tough. She established that tennis center up there, didn't she? No, that was his last wife. That wasn't Effie. That was the other one. I'm trying to think her name. Mary Treadwell, I knew.
Well, then it was.
They were 16th
It was a
Street.
real night. The mother of Marion's son, who just got himself in trouble.
Effie.
She was a nice
She's a real
nice
lady.
woman, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know his son? Janice will remember when we had a benefit softball game with Channel 9. WMAL played Channel 9 was WTOP TV at the time. And Marion came and he brought his son in his arms. And he's the kid now that had all the trouble at Riggs Bank. I can't believe that many years have passed. But Marion was good with the broadcast people. He participated. He played on both sides. Somebody in our group had to hold the baby while he played ball. Good guy to us.
No, Marion was...
Politician, Cully.
Now, I don't think this might not have been true right towards the end. But Marion was an unusual guy. From the 3rd District, and then I was in charge of the patrol division. Anyway, I dealt with Marion, and I could get along with Marion well. Now, at one time, whether they want to believe it or not, Marion didn't even drink, more or less do anything else.
I believe that.
And this was when he had his dashika and...
his Nehru jacket. Oh, yeah, I remember all that.
And I saw Marion one day, and he I don't remember. We were over Northeast, and instead of coming back in his limousine, he wasn't going to have to take the bus back. He had a limousine over there. He wanted to come back in my car, and we sat in there and talked.
That's our guy. Well, we're talking to Maurice Cullinane, former chief of police of the Metropolitan Police Department, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our wonderful restaurants at Washington Harbor. Tony and Joe's, the best seafood in the city. Nick's Riverside Grill, wonderful chops and steaks. Wonderful views of the Kennedy Center, Roosevelt Island, the Roslyn skyline. Spectacular. 2 bars outside right on the water. Fabulous food. For dinner reservations, call 202-944-4545. It's really a great experience. We'll see you down at Tony and Joe's or Nick's Riverside Grill.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
We're talking to Maurice Cullinane, the best chief of police Washington ever had. I can say that, Cully, because nobody can refute it, because I've been around a while. But Cully is also world-renowned for something special, and that was an ability to talk to young people, and he did it in front of, I don't know whether it was a parade, Cully, or what, but it was on the street. It was at Constitution Avenue, the picture of Cully talking to a little boy.
No, the picture was taken in, I think, 1956, and I'd just been a policeman.
You were
2
a patrolman,
years.
right?
I was a patrolman. And I don't think they do it anymore, but the Chinese had a New Year's parade, and they used to block off the streets from 6th Street, 6th and H down to about 8th and H, and
that was
they
the
had
old
dragons
Chinatown.
that came through. It was the old Chinatown. And they threw firecrackers, but instead of throwing them single, they'd light the whole pack. And when they go off, they'd blow all over the place. And so I was standing on the curb, and a child walked out. And I wanted to make sure, first of all, that I didn't scare him, and secondly, that I got him away, because I was afraid of firecracker, which they weren't throwing them at him, but when you throw that whole pack up in the air, those firecrackers go anyplace. And so I was talking to him, and one of those photographers that just drove around, you know more about it than I do, his name was Bill, awful nice guy. And he took a picture when I was talking to the child to get him back. The child was with his mother. His father was in the military and was out of the country. And he put it in the news, and then Life magazine picked it up. And the thing very few people know is he had to come by and get you to sign. So he'd come by when he was getting ready to put it in a contest. The first contest he put it in, he got nothing. He didn't even get a booby prize. And the next one he put it in was the White House photographers, and he won a Pulitzer Prize.
That one snap, it was almost a snapshot, right?
He
didn't pose the picture. You had already established it.
It wasn't. It was not a posed picture. That is genuinely a candid shot that he just happened to take. But he told me that when he went, the news at that time was up on 13th Street. I don't know,
Absolutely,
up on
Daily
13th.
News.
And he told me that when he went into the dark room to do it, when he hung him up to dry, he knew that he had something special.
Well, it was what Janice was pointing out. It's an inner action between a policeman and a civilian. Even though he was a little kid, it was something that is so important now that must happen in our society, that there be better dialogue between people and policemen. Not color, but people and policemen.
And if you see, Chief Lanier is trying hard, and that's why I think that the city, I don't want to jinx the chief, but that's why I think the city's remaining quiet. I'm getting all my information out of the newspaper, but she's starting, she has picnics over in Southeast, and the policemen go over there and they cook hot dogs for the policemen.
They feed the public, right?
I could do that, but they had a dance-off, and a police woman let the kids do whatever their dance, and then she busted her moves. Now, I could not have done that. No, not that I was too good to do it or didn't want to do it. I just couldn't have done it. But she is real good at it, and if you watch her, she has this ability. When she goes to the scene of a crime, she puts her arm around someone who has just lost a loved one or is hurt.
She shows up everywhere, Cully. It's amazing.
Well, I showed up. I honestly did show up, but there's some people that can do that. If I did it, it would look like I was doing something because that's what I was supposed to do. When she does it, it looks to me like that's her, that she is genuinely concerned.
She happens to be better looking than you, too.
that wouldn't take much.
That's not but Cully, I think she is a epitomized civilian policing. She shows up, got a nice attitude. She doesn't jump at things. She takes her time. So we're fortunate. We're fortunate enough to have you as chief of police. Fortunate enough to have Kathy, and we're fortunate enough you and I are still here talking about it.
When we get finished here, we'll take a ride over Rosedale, and
I love it. I would tell Janice about going to swimming at Rosedale at 6 in the morning because that's the only time it could get in the pool. After that, it was too crowded. There's no place to dive. We've had a long, beautiful chat here with Maurice Cullinane, a native Washingtonian, a member of the police force for as long as we can remember, and a good guy. And we appreciate the former chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Maurice Cullinane.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcasts.